Hey guys, welcome back. So now after much waiting and much anticipation, we are now getting into the latest 5-part miniseries from Peter David with the new 2023 Joe Fixit series, which tells us a new story about his time back in Vegas, and I'm glad about it. But with us getting into this, first I want to do a bit of a proper origin explanation for Joe Fixit, then I want to get into when exactly this takes place, and then after that, we'll get into the story of the Kingpin punching above his weight, which he didn't know he could do. But with that said, before we get into it, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so for this one, Peter David is taking us all the way back into the Joe Fixit era, which some would say had initially kicked off in Incredible Hulk issue 324 when we got the return of the Grayskin Hulk. But even at this time, with the return of the Grayskin Hulk and him sticking around for a while, his story was still kind of the same for a little bit, with him fighting Hulked out Rick for a little while and going back and forth with the leader. But in Incredible Hulk issue 345, Peter David brought us the story closing curtain, and it was at this time when the leader had tricked the Hulk into chasing down a gamma bomb, to where then the Hulk found the bomb with 2 hours to spare. But at the time, this didn't even matter because the leader, he then detonated the bomb prematurely within an impenetrable force field. And when this happened, the world believed that the Hulk was dead. But then after this, when we then jump forward into Incredible Hulk issue 347, which is the official first appearance of Joe Fixit, we find that 3 months later after this explosion, the Hulk has made his way to Las Vegas and he's already working as a fixer for big-time crime boss Michael Berenghetti. And it was at this time where the Hulk expressed that he had seen this as a new opportunity for a fresh start, because with him also recently getting the ability to stay as the Hulk during the day, this allowed him to take the job with Berenghetti, while in addition keeping Bruce out of the picture because he believed Bruce wasn't good for nothing but messing things up. But at the time, this was more or less the explanation that we were given by Peter David that had given us the birth of the Joe Fixit persona, with the Hulk now becoming a fixer while also keeping Bruce suppressed, with the Hulk believing that Bruce would always mess things up. And it makes sense, because if you're gonna become the opposite of someone who you believe messes everything up, then naturally you're gonna become Mr. Fixit. So for the Hulk, or Joe Fixit at this point, for him this literally felt like all the stars aligned, and he now had the opportunity to do things his way. But also as like an honorable mention, aside from Peter David establishing Joe Fixit, later on in Immortal Hulk, we had got a little bit more of this explanation by way of Al Ewing, with him going down the list of Banner's different identities and telling us how they came about, since Bruce's alternate Hulks are created when these multiple identities disassociate from his own. Because at the time in our talks of Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk, we talked about a few of these examples, like the Devil Hulk for instance, because that identity developed from a young, angry, and abused Bruce Banner, who imagined a better father figure who would protect him from his actual father, Brian Banner, even though that literal Hulk would not manifest for years. And at the time we had talked about how the development of these different Hulks takes place as they disassociate from Banner's identity over the course of years, until they form into their own identity. And amongst these examples in our conversations at the time, we saw that there was a similar process for Joe Fixit, because he developed from the side of Bruce, who always had to figure things out. So really I'd say if you put all of these things together, the Joe Fixit we got in Incredible Hulk issue 347, he had already been a long time in the making, but then given his circumstances at the time, with the gamma bomb going off, having everyone believing that the Hulk was dead, and this then created a moment, if I had to pick one, where Joe Fixit as we know him was actually born. And so now for this one, much like Peter David did with the 2020 Maestro series, this series is also visiting a pre-established point in time. And for this one, we're stepping in after Incredible Hulk issue 349, which was like the second half of a 2-part team up while Spider-Man was in Vegas. And at the time, we got this hilarious moment where Peter was talking to Joe Fixit, and it dawned on him in mid-conversation that Joe Fixit is the Hulk. And I always thought it was hilarious because like the gray skin and the zoot suit couldn't have thrown you off that far. Or at least it shouldn't have, because when Peter seen him, he was like, man, the Hulk's supposed to be green, the Hulk's supposed to be dumb, and the Hulk's supposed to be dead. And I guess at the time he was kind of putting this together with the idea that the Hulk was supposed to be dead. But even still, it's like, come on man, I don't care how low he wears that hat, shouldn't be fooled that easy. But apparently at the time, Peter was not alone, and this was kind of the lingering mystery that hovered around the big guy. And everybody just kind of believed the idea that his skin was gray because he had a condition called argyria, which could actually turn a person's skin a gray or bluish color from overexposure to silver or ingesting silver. But of course, at this point in time, Peter knew that wasn't the case. Mr. Fixit is definitely the Hulk. But while Peter's at the airport waiting to catch a flight back to New York, he can't help but to see the local news talking about the new mysterious Joe Fixit, with them mentioning that he works at the Coliseum Casino, but with no one really knowing exactly what it is he does, just that he works directly with the casino owner, Michael Berenghetti. But while this local report is playing, they're showing a number of instances where Joe Fixit is showing to have superhuman abilities, from examples of body cam footage showing him getting shot multiple times and not being harmed. And there's even an instance of traffic cam footage of a car running a light and hitting Mr. Fixit while he was crossing the street with Mr. Berenghetti. And with Peter waiting on his flight and seeing all this, at this point for him, he's looking at this and thinking to himself, like, how can nobody not know that this is the Hulk? As if he picked it up on first sight. And I mean, it didn't take Peter long to figure it out, but initially he was fooled like everyone else. But while Peter's here at the airport, his spider sense goes off, and then he sees Wilson Fisk arriving in Vegas. And with him knowing that this has to be trouble, he plants a spider tracer on him and nearly gets caught doing so. But fortunately, Fisk thinks nothing of it, because he thinks Peter's just some dumb kid and he lets him go on about his way. But as soon as Fisk continues on his way, one of his security guards points out the local news broadcast that's talking about Joe Fixit and the Coliseum Casino. And in passing, the guy points at the TV and he's like, "Isn't that where we're going?" And Wilson Fisk looks at the TV, he sees Joe Fixit, and he's kind of like, oh, that must be the Coliseum's new enforcer, Joe Fixit. And Fisk says that Joe Fixit's job is about to get more difficult. But with Peter hearing this in passing, he cashes out his plane ticket because he knows he's gonna have to stay in Vegas for a little while. And so with Wilson Fisk making his way to the Coliseum Casino, he already has a meeting scheduled with Mr. Berenghetti. And the guise of this meeting is made to look like Wilson Fisk wants to partner up with Berenghetti in order to keep the Magia away, which in their case is more like an Italian mob or mafia. But for Wilson Fisk, he wants to set up this alliance only so he can take over Berenghetti's operation. And so around this time, Peter's also making his way to the Coliseum Casino. But also, while he's on his way there, Peter has this very interesting monologue of thought. Because he knows Wilson Fisk is just going to march up in there and do his Kingpin thing and expect everyone to just do what he says. And as Peter's going through these thoughts, he mentions of Wilson Fisk having this confidence in his own strength because he's gone toe-to-toe a number of times with Spider-Man. But for some reason, Peter has a feeling that Wilson Fisk is about to get a reality check as far as where he truly stands on the strong arm hierarchy. And so when Fisk makes his way there, first of all, he disrespects Mr. Berenghetti by not shaking his hand. But then when he tells Mr. Berenghetti that they have mutual interest as far as keeping the Italian mob away, and Mr. Berenghetti's more or less like, oh, I got that handled. Joe Fixit took care of it and I'm straight. And so needless to say, Wilson Fisk didn't like this. So he breaks Berenghetti's desk. And at a moment's notice, Joe Fixit enters the room. And he more or less lets Fisk know that he's gonna pay for that in more ways than one. But then one of Fisk's men points a gun at Joe Fixit and Joe's just like, go ahead and shoot, it'll be fun. But as soon as this guy sees that it's not working, he then points the gun at Berenghetti because he has a good feeling that he ain't bulletproof too. But immediately Joe lets this guy know that if he kills Berenghetti, he's not leaving this room alive. But it's here we find that Spider-Man's been watching and listening this whole time from the vent, and he just webs up the guy's gun on his hand to keep him from shooting Mr. Berenghetti. And when this happened, Joe just slapped the guy out the way, and he tells Fisk that they're pretty much done here. But Wilson Fisk ain't hearing that, and he runs at Joe Fixit full speed. And when he does this, Joe doesn't even budge. And I mean, with us being among those who know better, we know why the full force of Wilson Fisk is failing to produce a flinch or even an inch of pushback on Joe Fixit, because the most he does is get Joe's hat to fall off. Which again is not because Joe moved, but it's just to show you Wilson Fisk is doing the most. But after just a few seconds of Joe just getting tired of all this, he catches Fisk's fist and he picks him up. And he body slams this man so hard that the guests in the casino thought they had just experienced an earthquake. And I'm not joking, these people actually thought it was a natural disaster because this landing shook the house. But I'm gonna tell you right now, it didn't end there, because the baptism continues, because Joe Fixit gives Wilson Fisk the Wilson Fisk treatment. Because even with Joe Fixit not being the strongest Hulk, Kingpin is still light work for him. And I don't want to hear anybody in the comments say otherwise, because if you believe that this should have went differently, then you are bugging big time. But eventually this comes to a point where Joe tells Fisk to say it out loud, say that it's over. And Fisk, he says it. But then Joe tells him to say it in French. And Wilson Fisk is like, si es fini. And then Joe tells him to say it in Pig Latin. And right there, Mr. Berenghetti's like, all right, that's enough, that's enough. But you know what else is funny to me? Like, just picture everybody else in the room just watching all this happen. Like, man, we ain't never seen Kingpin catch it like that. But from here, when Kingpin makes his way to go cry in the car, Mr. Berenghetti shows his gratitude to Spider-Man by offering him a guest suite, as well as opening an account for him for whatever he needs, whether it's food, gambling, whatever. And he says Spidey can stay as long as he wants. And initially Spidey's more or less like, I don't know, man, that's a bit much. But when Mr. Berenghetti insists, there's really no saying no to the guy. But just after this, when we head back over to Kingpin, he's not exactly crying in the car, but when one of his guys tries to tell him that he has blood on his lip, he literally breaks this guy's neck. And with seeing this, I guess it's because he's embarrassed, but even still, if that was the case, like imagine if Vanessa was here. But then it's here where we see Kingpin say that he has a new plan, and that plan is to kill Mr. Fixit. And I mean, with him saying this in the car, far away from Mr. Fixit, far away, far away, it kind of gives me the I got mind control over Debo kind of vibes. Like when he's here, I be quiet, but when he's gone, I be talking again. But yeah, I mean, we'll see how that goes when we pick this back up. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/Dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.